I can change almost anything.
What up, everyone? DJ Nubis here with you on the Meltdown Radio podcast with a new series called What If, and I've got some very special guests today.
Ghostface himself.
Yes, there you go. Gojira851 is here with us.
What's up?
Thrash Pondo Pons. Been a while with my good friend down there. And of course, Anthony Jordan from Movies and Gaming there, giving us the ever so ghost face mask with his knife. What a many knives that he has.
Mm-hmm.
So if any of us end up dying on this show, you know where to go. Like this guy right over there. So basically, this wasn't really going to be like an entire podcast series for me, even though Kevin Lambert suggested maybe I do that. So I thought, okay. But my original idea behind this was, you know, I've seen all the Scream films. I enjoy the series. I enjoy especially the first two films a lot. I'm kind of with the Goji when we were talking in the background about some of the movies become repetitive. They're kind of just going through the formula, redoing things. But, you know, as fans of horror, we've done that with Jason. We've done that with Freddy Krueger. We've done it with Halloween. We're suckers for horror, so we tend to keep doing it. We just keep feeding us. But I always got back and I was thinking about the original film. And there was always this one part about the film that stood out to me that at the time seemed like people were kind of like overlooking or not really talking about. And that was initially when Billy Loomis and Matthew Lillard's character began to, you know, show themselves as the killers, and they were just big horror fans. You had all the horror cliches that were being announced throughout the film. Wes Craven did a nice job of balancing the horror with the comedy. But there was a moment when Billy is exposing himself to Cindy Prescott, played by Nev Campbell, and the idea is like, why are you doing this? That's always the thing. So here's the scene that I'm talking about.
I don't really believe in motive, Sid. I mean, did Norman Bates have a motive?
No.
Did they ever really decide why Hannibal Lecter liked to eat people?
Don't think so.
You see, it's a lot scarier when there's no motive, Sid. We did your mom a favor, Sid. That woman was a slutbag whore who flashed her shit all over town like she was Sharon Stone or something.
Yeah, it would put her out of her misery. Because let's face it, Sidney, your mother was no Sharon Stone.
And so the reason why I bring that up is, without even really thinking about, Billy Loomis actually gives you the motivation for himself. Obviously, Lillard's character is sort of just a sidekick who's tagging along. Even he seemed kind of surprised that Billy was just worked up about the relationship that Sidney's mother had with his father, who ended up leaving. So it got me thinking, well, obviously in hindsight, because we know how the movies turned out, we know that he's now the killer. And so doing a prequel now doesn't really do much. But the what if scenario is, what if we had had a much darker entry into the Scream franchise where Billy's a little kid, younger kid, and this shit's going on. So we had just basically more of a thriller movie, drama maybe, and then you have, of course, Sidney's mother and the relationship there that builds the case for what Scream will become. So that would have made Scream much more impactful when it came to the reveal, because if we had seen the prequel, the darkness and the darker horror and the more serious tone of that, and of course the effect that it might have on Billy as a young kid with his dad, we still have the murder of Sidney's mother. And so instead of having Billy and the other guy being the killers there in that film, maybe have it be somebody else. But that's what inspired Billy to then become what he did for Scream. So first, your thoughts on my premise of that darker prequel, but then any other what ifs of the franchise you guys want to throw in. That's really what this discussion's about. What do you think of my idea? Or what do you think about that motivation scene? We'll start with Thrash.
Goody. Thank you. I was hoping you'd pick me first. So as you were speaking, I'm like, it may be a bit cliche and an overused trope, particularly in modern horror, but one of the things we see a lot, and going back actually to Norman Bates, is the killers become killers because of some horrible trauma. While subject, another thing horrible trauma does is it creates psychotic breaks. You block said trauma out. So perhaps young Billy Loomis is traumatized, blocks it out, but here's the twist, here's the wrinkle. He copes with the trauma of watching a murder by envisioning himself as being the murderer. So he didn't commit the murder. However, having convinced himself he is the murderer, he goes on a killing spree. Ain't that a twist? You killing spree as a result of a killing that you convinced yourself you did when you didn't. I had a friend in college, and I still think this would have made a great book. I had a friend in college who was very wigged out. We're having brunch one Sunday morning, and we're all hungover, and he goes, I got to tell you guys about something. And we're like, what, Tom? Well, what is this thing? He goes, well, I had this horrible nightmare that I was a serial killer, but I only did it when I was blackout drunk. So when the cops came to get me, I didn't even know that I was. I'm like, cool twist. So the greatest crime, I think, in modern horror, if you ask me, is the fact that, as you alluded to earlier, it is very derivative. So a twist like this, whether or not you could actually pull it off, I got to tell you, is at least original and something that I think could actually revitalize a franchise that has been done to quote unquote death like Scream has.
Yeah. Goji.
That would be interesting. That takes me back to thinking of these two different slashers from the 80s. Well, one technically from the 70s, one from the 80s. But they say that Jason witnessed his mother die, even though it is said that he drowned in Crystal Lake and was technically dead at the time. It's debated whether he was actually dead at the time or wasn't. because they say that he actually did observe his mother die on the actual beach area of Crystal Lake while fighting the final girl of the first film. And that at the end of the film, that was actually just him. That wasn't really him, or that was just a nightmare sequence. So that was left up to interpretation at the end of it. But then what we see in the following film was its own thing. But then we go back to the 70s and we have Michael Myers, where he has that innate, darkness already inside of him. Now, I understand the Thorn trilogy, where it's like a curse that they put on him, but that's much later. And a lot of people they write that trilogy off as its own thing. So I'm of two minds of that. I like the idea of the anger and just him blacking out. I like that idea, maybe a darker than having it just as watching too many movies and giving you like a fresh idea. I like that idea, but then again, I can see someone saying like, "Oh no, that's going to ruin the idea of it. That's going to ruin the mystery. That's what made it stand out." But no, I like your idea. That's a nice what if idea. I'd like to see that. Yeah, if they're going to do a prequel to it and they're going to reboot the franchise, if they ever were to do that, I like that idea.
Anthony,
I think it's a interesting concept, except you kind of have to put a considerable amount of effort into explaining in the backstory why this wasn't brought up in the events of the first movie. Like, that's the only hiccup I see.
well, that's the thing, right? So, like, that's why I said you really couldn't do the prequel now, because one thing that's always been a big Scream imprint has been the reveal, because we're always guessing who's going to be the killers this time, and they're always tied to somebody else, whether it's a diehard fan or it's somebody from someone who died from the past. Like, as it gets into the later Scream films, it gets even crazier. We have the apparition of Billy Loomis showing up, and it's like, what the fuck are we doing here? So really, but if we had gone back before that first Scream come out and put out a darker prequel that kind of like still left it ambiguous in terms of like who killed Sydney's mother, because we don't really know. Then by the time you get to Scream, and then that reveal with Billy, and he and Stu are sitting there talking about movies and how crazy they are, but then Billy's there saying, "Well, it's your mom's fault my father walked away." Well, then you're like, oh my fucking God, it's that little boy from that first film. So I always thought that would have been a cool concept. And that would have been like the biggest, like, what the fuck reveal ever, really. Obviously, the movie still did pretty well considering, but I always thought, man, a darker version of a prequel that would have opened this entire series and franchise up would have been very, very cool.
You got the parents flip-flopped.
Did I?
It was his mom that walked away because his dad.
Oh, because dad was cheating, right? That's my fault.
Mom.
My fault. Yeah, correct. Yep. So it was the mother walked away. So, but that's his anger about that because of what her mother did with his dad.
I got an interesting one for Scream 3. If you know like the history behind that film,
I recall. So go ahead.
Okay, you know how it was Stu was originally supposed to be in this one, and he was supposed to have people working for him, but because of Columbine, they changed that?
Yes.
Well, the next reiteration of the script, it was supposed to have 2 killers, but the studio just wanted 1. And when you watch the film, I think Wes Craven shot the film the way he originally intended as much as possible. And if you remember, there was the scene with the one character, I can't remember her name, but she was stealing one of the costumes, thinking with this movie being in the track, her career was dead and she wanted a souvenir. And I don't believe we see her body in the film. So I believe she was meant to be the second killer. So what if she got away and then went on her own killing spree that she could take out on a new cast of characters removed from the baggage of the original cast?
Yeah.
Okay.
I never thought of that. Yeah, wow.
I was kind of talking about with Goji and you guys behind the scenes. one of the things I've been talking about since the last Scream film is like maybe bringing back Lillard. Now we know that a TV fell on his fucking face, so like it's going to be pretty hard to bring that guy back from the dead. However, if you were to do like a twin that he had that no one knew about, technically you could bring him back.
Or even at this point, if you could do a prequel, he could play an uncle or even grandfather. It's we're talking what 30 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, you can almost spin off of this franchise too. Look what they're doing with John Wick, even though that's more action packed. Screen wise, you can make stuff that's like, how did these particular characters get formed the way they are? So Stu is a great example. Like, he's just a lunatic. He's aloof. And, his home life could have been shitty. So you can make any kind of side movie, like, as you said, Thrash, to make his older version of Lillard, the father, how he mistreated the kid. And that kind of led to that path for Stu. So there is different things you can do. What if I even liked Anthony's his mention about, rather than kind of keeping everything so close knit to like where everyone has connections, you could almost have a movie where you have two different pairs of killers working like against each other. Like maybe it's a competition.
Or you could have it where you have the killers and then you have another pair that's copying the MO, but they're actually vigilantes trying to get the actual killers.
Sort of like they allude to it, Natural Born Killers, or in V for Vendetta, where I don't want to say anti-hero, but the bad people start being emulated. People start actually acting like the two killers in I said Thrill Killers, but Natural Born Killers is what I meant to say if I did. So what could happen is there could have been pair of killers. It could have evolved into some kind of blood cult.
Ooh,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay.
Or how about this with I don't want to get into urban terrorism, although it's a really big story right now. But a certain person who's currently on trial after his capture at McDonald's. There's a bizarre amount of almost folk hero level of support for him in some circles. You could do something like that, where somehow, and of course, they've always been bashing on the press and how the press spins things to get ratings and money, but oftentimes gives the wrong impression. The press could turn it around with a Courtney Cox-esque anti-establishment commentator who somehow fans the flames.
Like an insurgency, pretty much.
Yes, like that.
And you could keep it small town where it's somebody in the town targeting wealthy individuals.
Sort of a reverse Freddy Krueger. Instead of the well-to-do people targeting the drifter, the working class target the wealthy.
You can make a statement about hating about violence towards people that are well off to you and how it's still wrong without it even being an actual message.
I think one of the things that works best with Scream is really like one of my favorite scenes out of the entire franchise is the opening to Scream 2. They've made a movie out of what happened with Sidney Prescott. It's called Stab. And then you have your first characters, I think Omar Epps, and I forget the woman's name, might be Jada Pinkett Smith, I can't remember, but they're in the movie theater watching this, and you have all the fans dressed in these ghost face outfits and everything. Of course, one of the killers slides into Omar Epps' position next to his girlfriend and ends up killing her, but no one really knows that it's real because everyone's acting crazy anyway. So the misdirection is so nice in that opening sequence. So things you're saying about.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I thought you were done. Excuse me, but they borrowed that actually from. I want to say it's called "He Knows You're Alone," but it was one of those early installment of the slasher films where two girls go to a late night movie on Halloween, and the killer's in the theater and kills one of them, but everybody thinks she's just screaming because she's enjoying the slasher
The
film. The
film.
irony being she was dragged there in the first place. So, I mean, that's another thing about the Scream franchise that I absolutely adore. I took a couple notes on it. It really is a love letter to the entire subgenre of slasher films. They really did their homework.
Yeah. Yep.
Although
what other-
I do disagree. Norman Bates did have a motive. Unrelated mommy issues coupled with her loss kind of made him go, woo! What could be a better motive than that?
He had a indirect motive, not a direct motive.
Granted.
Oh yeah, definitely. What other scenarios would you have liked to see in the franchise?
Me?
Anybody?
Okay, sure.
Floor is open.
Thank you. One thing that I loved when I saw the first one was, and perhaps I'm reading way too much into it, but Stu and
Billy.
thank you. We just said his name too. Stu and Billy are a very loose adaptation with some major discrepancies. Very loose adaptation of the thrill killers Leopold and Loeb. And I wish they had elaborated on that. I thought they had a very bizarre, intertwined relationship that I thought you could have gone further with. They weren't just two crazy friends who were trying to take their revenge out of the world. They were forming a gestalt. They were almost like Gilgamesh and Ereskadu. So I thought if there's some way they could have elaborated on that. Unfortunately, there's such little time between when they give the game away and they ultimately perish. You don't have that. So it wouldn't be a prequel or a sequel. It would have to be like an insert movie. Like if you stop the action there. And,
Correct.
So I suppose you could do an alternate history if they both survive.
Yeah, that's true. Because really, I mean, that would probably leave audiences a little frustrated because if you don't do the reveal and you still have this, because, throughout the early part of the film, we still question whether Billy is the killer or not because he gets arrested, he gets questioned, but then the killing still happens. So then it's like, okay, well, it's not Billy, that we thought at the time, but that, he was, if you're still able to play that cat and mouse all the way to the end, and even then, once Sydney, even if she says her dad, still doesn't have a full grasp of who the killer was, that it leaves you frustrated, but then it leaves you wanting more as well going into the next movie. So they could have easily kind of drugged that out for a couple films as far as the killers are concerned. It just depends how long the audience wants to play the game, as they say.
That's a very good point. Sometimes it gets old faster than the network wants them to.
Yeah, people start throwing shit at the screen like, what the fuck?
If you want to do something played on the no motive, why not even just dial up to just true terror of just a random act of violence? Because back in the day before the movie, who remembers how generic this mask was? It was at pharmacies, dollar stores, discount stores. Nobody cared about it before the movie. And that was the genius of the mask. It was easily attainable. No one wanted it. Anyone could have gotten it. So do a movie where the killer isn't one of our characters per se. You just see the killer or killers in the background, and then you just have just the shock for the characters of this is someone they don't even know, they're not familiar with, who tried to kill them.
I'll tell you something that's funny. This is a true story. When my friend was attending college, probably in the mid 90s, when all this movie was going on, he was going to college parties, and he also had all the hot chicks dressing up in school outfits and, guys dressing up goofy or whatever. He invited me down. He says, we're going to go to this party while you're down. I was like, okay, so it's for Halloween. So what are we doing? He had a friend of his make up a couple of robes, and he says, we're going as Ghostface. I said, both of us? He says, yeah. And he even got a knife where he took the blade, but he covered the edge with like some sort of protection so that, it wouldn't hurt anybody while we're out there. Now, nowadays, you probably couldn't get away doing that shit, but we walked into that party. and everybody backed away. Nobody wanted to even get near us. That's how much it had an effect on people because they're enjoying their drinking, they're having fun. The girls, you want to go talk to them, but they're like, no. So yeah, that was a fun time, definitely. But yeah, this franchise, like like I said, I did some reviews for the last couple of films that I finally got around to see, and they're not horrible. But at the same time, it's like again, it's kind of rinse and repeat. So I think, unfortunately, with Hollywood, sometimes when it comes to franchises, it's hard for them to inject something new to kind of re-kick things off. And so I'm not talking like rewrite it or reboot the first one. It's like more just let's come up with something new. So like what Anthony said about a pair of different killers, maybe with different goals of what they're trying to achieve. Or whatever, like I said, a prequel that just kind of tells the backstory, maybe both Billy and Stu, giving us some idea like why they went down the road they did, etc., etc.
The if you've ever seen the MTV series, I just seen the first season, but that proved you can do a completely different take on Scream and it still work.
Yeah, I never even saw that, so I don't know what was that all about.
I don't want to get into it. It does have a little bit of a backstory to it, but it's a lot better than I thought it was going to be. And if you can get past the different mask, which was for copyright purposes, it was actually pretty good. And for a TV series, it had some more creative kills than what we see in Scream, which just always boils down to this.
So if let's say they decided to do a remake of the first one, who would you like to see in the roles of Stu and Billy Loomis? What actors would you like to see? Putting you all on the spot. Yeah.
Well, particularly people whose wheelhouse is vintage cinema, because off the top of my head, I'd say Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
Right.
So if you want to do a dream team,
Yeah.
The dream team, yeah.
Kurt Russell. There you go. I'm a Kurt Russell.
Ooh, Kurt, but who would play the other one? Kurt Russell and exactly.
Sam Elliott. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
That'd be interesting.
Okay,
No,
Kurt Russell and Ron Howard, a young Ron Howard.
There you go. Okay.
This sounds like a cop-out, but I would just go with it, especially the main cast. Just look for some talented unknowns.
Yeah, that'd be best.
This way, you're just selling this as a new take on the story, completely clean slate, and none of our main characters are going to be familiar.
Yeah, you don't want to poison the well going into it where everybody knows him from somewhere. Now, I have an idea, like a serious idea. I was kidding about Kurt Russell because reasons, but actually, I wouldn't mind seeing Wyatt Russell in it for a character. I don't know who I would cast him as. I don't know if like as a parent, or I don't know if I have him as one of the killers. I don't think it would make sense. I think he's a little older, but maybe he's like one of the townsfolk, probably.
Yeah.
But like one of the young, I don't know any young kids nowadays. I'm too damn old. So
Well, I think surprisingly, because I'm not like a huge fan of him, but Timothy, what's his face from Dune, Charlemagne.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so he has that kind of nerdy look, and so like I think he could pull off one of them. Maybe Stu, in a sense.
It's kind of expensive, though, don't you think?
Well, yeah, but I mean, look, if you're rebooting Scream, it's going to have a nice budget because they know they're going to get people into the theaters, whether we love it or hate it. They're going to get people in the seats.
Fair enough.
Unless it goes like a certain direction, like woke wise, and kills it that way. But if you have people that are because a lot of times people will look for names for movies
Okay.
to say, "Oh yeah, I know who they are. I'm gonna go check this out." You know, because look what happened with Scream. There you have Jenna Ortega. She's a huge name right now. So
Yeah,
Okay,
we
then
have
I
Green to
know
blame for that.
I know exactly then who I would cast in it. Then Sydney Sweeney. Then boom,
oh
there you go.
yes,
That would sell out right there. Have her as, I don't know if I would have her as the final girl, but have her as like the best friend of the final girl. I would not.
Have
What's
her
up?
killed ruthlessly in the opening scene.
No, no,
Yeah.
Anthony, no,
Nice.
no, no.
Dude, they did to my girl Samara the last film, man. They took her out
No,
for it. Like,
no,
what are
no,
you doing?
You,
no,
of
no,
all
no.
people, should have a problem with her because they're putting her in the live-action Gundam movie.
I didn't say have her survive. I said she was gonna be like the best friend, that has the garage door
Oh,
scene.
okay, so she'll be like Michelle Gellar and her because she survived for a little while before she got taken out.
Yeah, have her do that scene. But yeah, have her, and who would be the final girl? Who would be Nev
Sabrina
Campbell's
Carpenter.
Who?
Sabrina Carpenter.
Again,
Okay.
cast a talented unknown.
Okay.
Well, unfortunately, Sabrina Carpenter isn't a talented unknown. So she's like possibly the most recognized person on the planet right now. But I guess actually, make a real good twist. Have everybody think she's going to be the final girl, and have her in fact be the killer.
That's
Oh,
amazing. Actually,
okay.
They
that's
kind
amazing.
of did that with Scream 4, though.
Oh well, I must confess, I only saw 3. So
Well, I saw 3 and 4, but I saw 4 once and I wasn't as impressed. So maybe I just forgot the plot
One of the
one.
characters in part 4 was Sydney's cousin, and it set up like she was going to be the final girl in this one, or one of them, because they weren't going to kill Nev Campbell, but it was revealed she was the killer. And she had the stupidest motive out of all of them.
And it's funny because
she wanted to be famous, but she didn't want to put in the hard work. So surviving a massacre would be her ticket to fame.
That is a dumb reason. And it's so funny because it's so easy to give female characters a convincing reason as to why they become killers. There's any number of traumas they can suffer. Say, you see, this did it. So yeah, just the fact she wanted to become famous, that's stupid.
I mean, you have a few girls out there. I mean, you could have Florence Pugh, great actress, in there. Peyton List is very good. Yeah, there's a
Have
few.
an all-female cast. Try to make a remake of Black Christmas again, only this time get it right. Ooh.
See, that's controversial because I actually like the 2006 version the best.
Really? Free country.
Except for maybe the end. The ending's a little bit wiki, but I really enjoyed the cast. I enjoyed the story. I actually did a review with Mr. Tony the Dead about the first one. And as much as I do like that one, I've always hated the fact that we just never got an answer to who the fucking killer was. I really hate that. Which kind of goes against my entire thing about, hey, we should just not give away our killers at the end of the first one. We should just keep going.
Well, it goes to show
me off.
Not revealing the killer is all about how you execute it. And that one, I'm not sorry to say, even though I respect it, it didn't execute the premise very well.
Which one? The first one?
Black Christmas.
The first
one?
Or
the second?
The one where you said you didn't like it was the first one you were talking about where you said you don't like that it gave the reveal of the killer.
Oh, at the end. So that's 2006. So yeah, I do enjoy that one more. But
the one from 1979.
Yeah,
you never find out who the killer is.
Is it 79 or 74?
Is it 74? It's sometime in the 70s. I was too young to watch it when I was a kid.
Because I thought it was before
revealing the identity of the killer or the killer just getting away. It can work, but it's a hard execution to pull off.
So yeah, 74 was the first one.
That makes more sense because I was a little kid when it came out.
Crazy. So any other ideas?
More ideas.
I see the gears turning in Matt's head.
I just thought of a way that this movie would probably lose a lot of money, but probably get a couple of butts in seats.
All right, let's hear it.
Oh.
It's funny. I love this actor, but I think we're all kind of tired of seeing him and everything. I know the
Don't
main
do it. Don't you do it. Don't you do it because I know where you're going. Don't you do it. Don't
All right,
do
I'll stop.
it.
I'll stop. I'll
He's
stop.
gonna say Pedro. He's gonna fucking say Pedro.
Please, please. Oh yeah. In the first scene, don't even let him speak. Just let it be brutal.
He should die like before we even get to the credits. Just
I was gonna have him as the killer, but I'll stop.
my God.
Just no, have it open up in the first scene. You see him walking down the sidewalk and
He
goes.
had that shit-eating grin on his face, and I knew exactly where he was going with that shit.
I love Pedro Pascal, but it'd be hilarious if he was the killer and he's thinking, "Come on, come on."
I-
It
And he-
actually wouldn't shock me if he ends up in one of these films.
And I
Would
would
not
not
shock.
watch it on the premise that he's in it.
Oh God!
I
Come on,
just
Pedro Pascal, Sydney Sweeney, and who else did we say?
Me, yes. I'm not a big Pascal fan either, to be honest, outside of Mandalorian.
Oh, come on!
What about Game of Thrones? He was great in Game of Thrones.
Yes,
I
he
didn't ever watch
was.
that. I watched like 2
Oh.
episodes and I never got back to it. So everyone says it's good except for the last season.
He was actually really good at it, although, well, if I say how he died, it'll give actually, I've already said too much. I'm going to stop talking.
Stop talking. Stop talking. That's enough out of you. You're gonna go in the corner. Okay.
Whoops a daisy.
Well, what?
Okay,
Because we talked a little bit about some of the things we would like to see, but each of you give me like your best concept for what you would like to see in a screen film, like even with just the characters, or like I do think maybe they should revisit the one where the supposed final girl is our killer. Like I don't remember much from 4, and I don't think a lot of people do. So, maybe what is your favorite concept that you would like to go with a Scream film if you felt like you need to inject something new? Go ahead.
Imagine a killer that is very charismatic, that actually starts to infect the people around him and actually starts to make people actually start to do crimes around him as well, or her around as well, and actually starts to become more of a problem around us. Everybody starts wearing screen masks and they start doing things because of the killer.
in a similar vein to Goji, what if we have some kind of twisted psychiatrist and he finds a couple patients that he sees has this violent nature in them, and rather than helping them like Dr. Loomis would, he brings that out and uses them to serve his means.
Here's one. Since one of the running threads, and I'm afraid to give the game away, but of course, if you haven't seen the Scream franchise, you probably wouldn't be tuning in here. But it's all connected through the mother. What if we broadened it a little bit? I saw a similar thing to this on an SVU. How about one of those cases where a person finds out they were the product of some kind of artificial insemination, and they become obsessed with the idea that they have siblings out there that they don't know. So they start tracking them down, but while they're tracking them down, kill them. So there seems to be no rhyme or reason to the murders, except that they're all biologically related to the person as a result of this donor program, shall we say, for want of a more tasteful title.
Yeah.
I remember that episode, yeah.
Like, their literal reason for getting targeted is just because they're family.
Mm-hmm.
Their minds can't accept the fact that there's family out there that they don't know. And so their solution is to kill them. Again, I don't recall seeing anything like it before, so at least it's a little on the original side.
To piggyback on that, there was an episode where the late Robin Williams was in, and my idea was, he was so infectious with his personality. He actually had people doing things they normally wouldn't, like holding up traffic or stopping bus stations and stuff like that because how infectious he was. And actually, holding people hostage that they normally wouldn't because that's how, what's the right way to use? That's how convincing that he could be while speaking on the phone. His character, not him, his character on the show. Imagine if we have a ghost face in this that doesn't need to just only kill in the movie. Imagine he could actually speak to people and be that convincing as well to other people and actually have them do things like that as well. So it's not only just, the old stabby, what's your favorite movie? Imagine he's talking people into doing that as well. So it's actually going further beyond than what it is. So he's becoming more of a problem than what originally was the original concept. That's pretty much what I was getting at as well.
Okay.
There's an old sleeper hit horror film from about 30 years ago, I want to say. It's called Mr. Frost.
Oh, Jeff Goldblum.
Give the man a cigar. Yes. And it has a fascinating premise. He presents himself like in Prophecy or Lucifer. And he presents himself as being Satan, but he's also a killer locked up in an insane asylum. And it's ambiguous. You never really know, is in fact this guy really Satan, possessing people, making them do horrible things? Or is he just a really, really, really manipulative serial killer who everyone he talks to, he gets into their head and gets them to do insane things, similar to the whole Hannibal Lecter franchise. So I can really see that working. You could actually use someone really unformidable, like who would be perfect would be I can't think of his name to save my life. Not Steve Martin Lewis, not Martin Lewis. Martin Short. Martin Short would be perfect as the manipulative person getting people to go out and do his killing for him. Or someone like that.
Who's the guy that did Scarecrow from Batman?
Oh, Cillian Murphy.
Yes, very good. He's very good as one of those type of like therapist type of guys.
Here's another one, and I'm ripping this straight from a anime I'm watching, and I'm in what's called the chapter Black Arc, and it has to do with this guy who wants to wipe humanity out because he got a hold of this supernatural tape that's like thousands of hours long, and it has every heinous act humans committed on it. So dial that down a little bit, but what if someone as a kid finds a videotape or a thumb drive or something, and this kid's father or mother just has this edited together video of just all kinds of heinous crimes, and we have a young kid watching this who it breaks his mind and makes him snap, and he just sees people as just monsters, and he's just this nihilistic twisted mess because of this thing his parent had, which warped his mind, and he's just killing people because in his eyes none of us are worthy of living because of how horrible humanity is.
That would make a great sequel to At the Mouth of Madness.
Yes.
And but listen, I'm just just you can tone it, take out the supernatural aspect, and it could even be a 30-minute long video of just heinous acts that the parent.
Actually, I just had a pretty interesting idea about, because Anthony, when you brought up the whole like if you had two separate ghost faces and one of them was like more like a vigilante, my new concept would be get your new pair of killers doing their ghost face stuff and wreaking havoc like they usually do, but then you have another killer into the fray, but this one is coming after the ghost face themselves, and while he's doing it is alternating his own mask. So he's using like Jason, Hard Eyes, Nightbreed. He just starts using the whole horror section of stuff to try to get back at these ghost face people. And in my visioning, this would probably be the younger brother of Sidney Prescott's mother, who is actually a little older now, but would have been young at the time that she died. And
And you
he's fed up with it all. He's like, all right, I'm going to turn the tables on these fucking whack jobs, and I'm just going to go kill them using their own horror against them.
And this could be like a harder to pull off, but you can really quadruple down on the psychological aspect. What if the guy has multiple personality disorder, and whenever he puts on a different mask, his personality changes a little bit? So if, say, he puts on the ghost face mask, he's more stealthy, but if he puts on the Jason mask, then he's just more brute force, brutal in his killings.
Yeah.
Do it as an anthology film where each segment is a different personality, and then have his psychiatrist, the presenter, used as a framing device.
And if he puts on, say, the Pinhead mask, he doesn't just kill his victims, he slowly tortures them to death. So you could do a lot with that premise.
Definitely. Well, gentlemen, that's all I have, really, unless you guys have something to add.
No, this is a lot of fun, but I think I've given all the wisdom I can on this matter.
Yeah.
I think I'm tapped
However,
out
I do have my next topic. I'm not sure when I'm going to get to the next episode of this. However, I do realize my next topic is actually one that's going to strike Goji a little bit. I'm going to be doing a what if with 2010's Predators. And I'm going to revisit that one because I have some problems there that I need to fix. So
problems? What?
So I know Goji would be very interested in that one because he does
very,
like that film.
very. Oh yeah.
But for right now, why don't you guys tell me what you got coming up in Thrash? I haven't seen you in a while, so you go first, my friend. What do you have coming up on your channel that people need to know about?
Well, I still do my normal Sunday night chats, generally 7:30 around there. I do a solo and then alternate with an actual group chat. This week it's going to be solo. It's basically it's a light Q&A. I always say BYOT, bring your own topic. Vintage sci-fi horror preferred, but I'll talk about modern TV. I had a great series not long ago on the recent installment of Fargo. I also guest with Dave Sundstrom on his channel, The Good Stuff. Sister Sarah and Snark and Sass have me on periodically as well. And of course, let's not forget Kevin Lambert at the Entertainment Headquarters. He's got something coming up, hopefully very soon. And we're still talking about doing our Warriors retrospective, which I can't wait for.
I would love to do that. Love to do that.
And I'd love to see all you guys on any of those projects.
Anthony.
Well, kind of an interesting week. I got this Friday is Friday the 13th, so I'm starting my best moments of series where I'm going to do just a few simple videos talking about not a review, but the best moments of each movie. And Saturday, you're going to be joining me with the professor. We're going to be having a Jaws 50th anniversary discussion, and Gojir will appreciate this one. I'm also kicking off very soon a review of Gundam Wing for the 30th anniversary. I'm going to do it in 5-episode blocks.
Nice.
Very nice. Very nice. Goji.
Well, I am still waiting on a certain X Plus figure to come in. Everybody else is getting it. I'm not salty at all. Waiting for it to come in. But still, I'll be waiting patiently for it to come in.
That's how I am with my Shimu. It still has not shown up yet.
Yeah. I have a certain Marvel Legends figure of one of my favorite characters, Venom, that I'm going to be reviewing soon. So I got that. This summer, I have been talking with a certain Anthony Jordan, Movies and Gaming, about the film The Last Samurai. He has invited me to do a discussion about that. I look absolutely forward to watching that movie again and reviewing it. That is one of my top 4 favorite films of all time, and I look forward to reviewing that film with him, discussing that with him as well. Other than that, don't really have anything else planned. I mean, I have other unboxings and other things, on the way. You have to really gotta backtrack to see what those are. But till then, I'm just here, and I'm gonna be working with you guys behind the scenes, helping out, and just being wherever I can.
Awesome. As for me, tomorrow, Nick and I are actually going to be kicking off a new show called The Cultureverse Mindset. And it's basically like news in the entertainment sphere. We're just going to talk a little different articles and topics, have some fun with it. Some of the stories might be a little crazy and weird, but that's all that is for her and I, just to kind of do something a little fun, a little bit outside of the drama or out of like reviews and stuff. So it's just more loose news type stuff that we're going to do. Wednesday, Cinematic Synergy with Kevin Lambert. We are doing The Illusionist from 2006. We're going to be reviewing that film with Edward Norton and Jessica Biel. And then Thursday, I'm getting together with Kevin Lambert again for the Retro Movie Show, and he's doing a special where we're going to talk about and review the first 4 Karate Kid films. And then, of course, as Anthony said, Saturday, we will be talking Jaws 50th anniversary. It's going to be a lot of fun. I was actually 5 years old at the drive-in when I saw that. So I've loved that movie for a very, very long time. I don't know. Did you ever get Lady Fablood to join us with that one or no? Or maybe that was Jedi was doing it. I can't remember. But either way, if you've seen any of the Scream films and you have any what-if scenarios that you guys feel like that are watching this video, let us know in the comments. Like and subscribe, and please go to all these content creators here and like and subscribe to their channels as well. A lot of good stuff there. As for you guys, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you hanging out and talking a little shop. And we'll see you next time on the Metal Time Radio podcast.